Okay, today is Monday, April 11th. Recording is on. So what we're going to do today is cover sort of your Dollar General assignment, working through that in class here today that you turned in. But I also wanted to highlight some logistics and the changes that have been adjusted based on the schedule. So your next group case project presentation was originally scheduled for this Wednesday, the 13th, but I am moving it to Monday, the 18th. Okay, so that is going to be your third group case project for 10 points or 10% of your semester grade. Today, I'll give you the company that you're going to work on in that group case project, and then again, give you time today and to work on that case, right? And then just switching up a little bit. So on Wednesday, the 13th, we are going to start the content for the multiple section. Okay, so just to keep on track for that. So there will be lectures on multiples and the appropriate readings, which we'll cover in class on Wednesday, the 13th. So that we can do the presentations on Monday, the 18th. I do recognize that is the day after Easter, but nonetheless, it is not a school holiday. So it is going to be our presentation day on Monday. So with that in mind, we are going to, as I said today, kind of talk through Dollar General. And I'm logging into Bloomberg right now. And again, I understand the Dollar General was a relatively big assignment. So let me go back here. Log in. All right. Open that file and share my screen. So I'm going to share my desktop. It'll probably be easier if I do that again. All right, so this is my Dollar General as is model. So the first thing, as I said, that we needed to do was export your data file from Bloomberg using Dollar General FA, and then under custom, you should have the model template. So you'd have exported that to Excel, and then you would have gotten rid of the dashes and replaced those with zeros. So that would have created this file. From a process standpoint, you would have then copied and paste special values into this tab in the valuation model, okay, that you had built. And again, once this is here with all the data, you'd have checked your CFI to see if your CFI is still in balance. If it's not in balance, then you made a mistake and you have some sort of an invalid model. So you have to figure out what your model data you had to fix to get your model to balance. Okay. So once you have done that, then you would have started adjusting the data for Dollar General. So the first thing you do is you notice that the last year for Dollar General is 2022, okay? Because retail firms don't have a fiscal year that ends in December. Many of them actually end in January to capture the full Christmas holiday selling season. So they're technically in their fiscal year 23 right now is the first forward year. Okay, so they're close their year January 2022. So here under assumptions, last reported year, we need to switch to 2022. Okay, and then again, all of the, you see this here, the ratios, all the forecast years have been adjusted. So that's now 2023 and beyond. Okay. So then you would have gone through and adjusted the other numbers. So again, screenshots that I took last week, starting with my DES, 235.79 was the share price. And shares outstanding is 228.8 million. So you need to make sure that you adjusted the share count, because obviously if you don't adjust the share count, then you're going to get some weird share prices in this valuation model compared to the company that you're evaluating. Right? Next, we would have put in the WACC. At the time, it was 6.5%, much lower than what it was for the previous companies we had looked at. Retailers a little bit less risky and more predictable, lower betas. Next, we would have put in the EEO data for revenue and for EBITDA for the next 4 years. And we'd have grabbed the multiples off of the EEO screen as well. Second forward year now being 24-25. Okay, because they're already in 23. Right, but again, in Bloomberg, we're just counting columns. I told you before, first forward year, second forward year, third forward year, fourth forward year. These would be the two, is this estimate. We can tell it's the first forward year. So again, as I said, this is a mix of current and forecasted data. So we use the pure forecasted data, 1, 2. So put in those multiples. Okay, getting our estimated EBITDA margins. Next, we would have looked for, to adjust over here, a tax rate. And as I said, a couple different places we could have looked, but specifically we would have checked guidance first to see if the company gave any guidance on tax rate. And they did, 22.75%. Okay, so essentially we would use the company's tax rate guidance. It's here. Next, we would change their EBITDA margins in perpetuity. So 9.4, both of those multiples agree. So to get that to be 9.4, this needs to be 11.3. Okay. Now, ironically, that was 11.3. You had to type in 11.3 just because of our rounding issue, but nonetheless, that would have made it 9.4. Okay. If we reset the growth rates to 5.1, and then basically we put in the multiple and we solve for the multiple to solve for a forecast G that makes the model multiple work. Now this is an iterative step, but nonetheless, we'd have gotten 3.42%. Come in here, adjust the it's back. 1. Okay. So somewhere around here, got this to match. And so I use 3.42. Well, rounding there because you actually use the solver. And so again, just change these. So undo to 5.5. All right, so at around 3.42, these multiples are pretty close. 5.5% growth, somewhere in there would have been your as is. This would have been the file that you had saved. And that would have been the as is model for Dollar General. So I'm going to pause just to see if there's any questions about anything that you had to do to get to this point. All right. Well, as I said, from here, you would have then done your bull, your bear, and your target. So as I said, you could have used the IBIS World Report at a minimum. As I said, you kind of do a little bit of an EIC. So you should have started reading through this BICO. And again, thesis right here. So they're facing tough comparisons on sales and margins because costs, particularly transportation costs, are higher. They're dealing with some issues with inflation, like all of the other players, and whether those costs are going to be passed along. Also, they are dealing in some issues with labor because their labor costs are trying to go up as well. So again, just issues that they're talking about here, as they're also trying to go a little bit more upscale to try and get a little bit more margin expansion. Again, focusing on food to drive sales growth. And hopefully more store visits. You know, their historical key to success has been because they have stayed out of cities, they're more in rural areas. This was originally kind of like Walmart's strategy before it went national, a little bit less competitive, and so therefore ability to have a little bit better margins. But nonetheless, they're continuing to try and expand. Right. And again, just all this data is right here, right, as you kind of read through this. And then again, you go through the industry primer to get a sense of what's going on at the industry level. Okay. Yeah, inflation being a very big issue right now, particularly for food retail as part of the discount retail start of the business, and the move to e-commerce. So again, this is going to be important to give us the context to do the bull and the bear. So again, the bull and the bear is not just a mathematical exercise, right? If it is, you've missed the point, okay? So you're just not trying to say plus or minus some standard deviation. Like that's not the goal of what we're doing here with the bull and the bear. It should be context-based, based on what you're reading about the company and then tying it to the assumptions that you're making, okay? So it should be both a qualitative and a quantitative look at what the firm has done. So with that in mind, why don't somebody tell me a little bit about your bull that you submitted? What were some of the assumptions you made in your bull, and how high did your bull go? So how about Zachary Ritz, H-R-I-C-Z? Tell me about your bull.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Tell me about your bull model. What were some of the assumptions you made? How high did you get your share price?
So for the margins, I think I increased them to just like 11.8 and 12.2. And then the revenue growth, I did, I think just like 6.1, around like 6.6. And then I think I changed the assumptions to have a little bit higher revenue, which got the model share price to be around like 280.
Okay. And what was the rationale for those changes?
I just think that since like with inflation data, people are gonna like be trying to save more money by shopping at like these discount stores like Dollar General.
Okay. And that would lead to the more sales. Why do you think they're going to get higher margins?
I also think that fuel prices will decrease just after like the conflict with Russia will end. So that will decrease transportation and shipping costs.
Okay. So that would lead to the potentially lower margins in the future.
Higher margins.
Or sorry. Yeah. Early in the morning. Thank you. Higher margins in the future. Okay. And then you got as high, you said, as 280 or so?
Yeah, I think around there.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. How about somebody else? Give me their bear. How about Yvette Hulsel? Tell me about your bear.
Right. So for my bear, for my as is model, I actually got 11.3%, but I decreased it for the EBITDA to 10% because
Okay.
I looked up the industry margins and it turns out they were pressured because of inflation and labor challenges and transportation, virus related expenses, things I just looked up. And so then they also have high costs with products and wages and things like that. So I thought that would decrease the EBITDA. And then for the revenue growth, I said my original was 9.1% in my as is model, but then I decreased it to 8% because of the decrease in revenue, which will decrease the revenue growth rate as well.
Okay. And what kind of price did you get after you did all that?
So then my price ended up being $188.
Okay, great. So thank you for that. So given those two bulls and the bears, we have sort of a range that goes from 180 in sort of a more pessimistic scenario up to around, as there's 280 in the more optimistic scenario. So we've essentially set our range with our bull and our bear. Okay? And that's really the point of the bull and the bear, is to understand what could happen potentially in the next 12 months. And again, it's not guaranteed to happen, but the idea is this is our likely range with sort of a reasonable degree of confidence. And so once we've established the range, then we go to model number 4 to basically put in our opinion. Okay, so the idea of a target model is that is now your opinion. That is where you think the company is going to end up, somewhere in the middle of that range, which will then, based on the change in that share price to today, create the concept of a buy, sell, hold opinion. Okay, so why don't somebody kind of say what your final opinion was? Let's go with Krishna Patel.
I basically felt like the revenues would grow in the future years because of like physical stores and their expansion strategy. And then I also said that I don't see like a digital future for them, so I wouldn't like increase the revenues by too much, just slightly. So I increased mine to 5.8%. And then I felt like the estimated margin should also increase and reflect in the higher EBITDA as a result of the expansion. The growth rate and the WACC I said should remain the same. However, the tax rate should be adjusted and more increased because of ongoing events and causing inflation. With this, I said it would give me a share price of 256, which was within like the 10% of the original price, and therefore I said it was a hold too.
Okay, great. So again, we have a buy, we have a sell, or sorry, we have a bull, we have a bear, and then we have a target price within the 10% range, which again, we're calling Dollar General hold. And so as we kind of go through the valuation, these are the steps that we would have needed to complete for the homework assignment. And again, all 3 of the students, so thank you for being willing to share this morning. That's what we're looking for in the write-up. All right, so again, all of them related it to some real world issues behind the assumptions they changed. They're very specific about the assumptions they changed. They use numbers, which is very important as well. And so you could follow the story as you went through all of the models, right? So if they did that and they turned in their assignment, they should get a very good grade. Okay. So questions about any of that related to Dollar General, the steps, the process, what they need to do, what you need to say. Questions?
I had a quick question.
Yes.
So when I was doing my model, I was kind of like I kind of like assumed for all of my models that the tax rate would pretty much stay the same, because I didn't really like have any, I guess like extra insight into that. You know, I think I trusted the management's guidance. But how, like, what would be something that could potentially affect that, and like you might have a different opinion than management?
Um, well, I guess the question would be, what would be a catalyst to change the tax rate for a primarily US company longer term? And so, let's say that we were closer to the 2024 election, and it was looking like there was going to be a Democratic wipeout, and Republicans were going to seize all three branches of government. And part of their, I'm just making up a hypothetical here, but part of the campaigning that we start to see is that they're promising to reduce and roll back Democratic taxes. So that might start to play into people's forecast of what taxes are going to be going forward. Now, technically, the guidance of companies should be picking this up. So we got to be very careful about, deviating too far from what the companies are telling us. But nonetheless, if we are expecting a substantial disruption because of an election, with probability, we might play that out as one of our scenarios. So we could say, okay, in a bull scenario, tax rates go down to some amount, put it in here, change the model price, but that's only in our bull scenario. We don't put that in our bear scenario. We don't put that in our target scenario. But, right now we would be way too far out from an election to really, put that in with any probability. But nonetheless, that might be one way that you could think about a change in a tax rate for a company. But typically tax rates, and that's the whole idea, is the governments want the tax rates to be fairly predictable so that companies can make decisions based on that.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Great question. Other questions about this? About thinking through the markets, thinking through what you changed, how you create the files? Because like I said, there could be very permutations. 280 didn't have to be your final bowl. It could have been higher, it could have been a little bit lower. As I said, it's really just, what are the assumptions you're making? Why are you making them? Is there a rationale that you're tying to that makes sense? That's kind of how these are going to be graded. And obviously the models have to balance, which is going to be important as well. So again, any more questions about Dollar General? All right, so let's start talking about your next assignment, which is group case 3, which, as I said, 10-minute presentation. And the company that you're going to do on your third project is Merck, which is the big global pharmaceutical company. So MRK US Equity is your group case project. So let's go in here. So here is Merck, say share price around $88 a share. As I said, you should be reading and doing a little bit of BICO on them and or IBIS World under FA, custom. You should have your model template for Merck ready to go, right? And again, 6 years worth of historical data. Remember to get rid of all of the dashes, place those with zeros. And the only difference between Merck and the Dollar General project that you just did is that you'll need to choose one person on your team to use their model that you're going to turn in on behalf of the entire team. And also, instead of a paper next week, you're going to submit a PowerPoint presentation, just like you've done before, and you're going to have to cover all of the models in 10 minutes. Okay, so it's a verbal presentation. And you're going to have the 4 Excel files that you're going to submit, along with your PowerPoint, along with your screenshots in the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so what's going to be very important when you go through this presentation is that you present all four models and the summary of what's changed in your PowerPoint. Okay, so that's going to be very important when you do the Merck assignment. Okay, you can't leave the PowerPoint to go to the Excels. You're going to turn in your Excels, but you can't jump to the Excels. So you're going to have to copy and paste the relevant screenshots from your PowerPoints, or sorry, from your Excel models into your PowerPoint. Okay, and again, I do that because since we have 6 teams that are going to be presenting, I don't want one team to say, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about this, so I'm going to jump to my Excel model to talk about this. If it's not in the PowerPoint, I'm not going to grade it. Okay, so you got to cover all 4 models in your PowerPoint. You got to have the screenshots, the DES, the EEO, the WAC in your PowerPoint. Okay, and you got to refer to all the data as you go through in your PowerPoint. You have references, put up the sources in your PowerPoint. Okay, so again, you're going to be turning in a PowerPoint on behalf of your team. It's a group project, group grade. Again, there will be peer reviews. So make sure that you're all participating in the group project. It is a group grade. You can decide who is presenting on behalf of your team, but nonetheless, everybody needs to equally participate in creating this PowerPoint presentation on Merck. One final thing I want to show you about this is I'll put up here from a previous semester. I'm going to put up an example presentation from a previous semester that a team turned in, just so you get an example of what I am talking about. Help you visualize it. And to do that, switch in sorry, just going through a list of historical courses here. Files. All right, I'm going to put this link in the on your website. Share screen. Chrome. So a few years ago, a team did a presentation on Carnival, the cruise ship company. And what was very helpful, now at the time, they had to do all 4 sections all at once. You're only doing one of the sections in the PowerPoint. We kind of switched the way it did, but this is the valuation section to talk about it. But what I found very helpful is when they went through their as is model, okay, they basically put in the key assumptions right here. They kind of cut and pasted what they had changed out of the forecast slide. So it's really clear what they changed. And then they had a little bit of write-up and then showing what the share price changes were. Okay. And so they had to do what's called a sanity check at the time. I'm not asking you to do that. So again, bull, assumptions, changes, price, skip sanity check, bear, changed assumptions, explain why, prices, target share price, changes, assumptions, why. Again, you don't have to do a sanity check, and then the buy, sell, hold opinion. Okay, so essentially just kind of give you a sense of what one of these presentations will look like. Let's see if I can do another one really quick. Let's see. Let's go right here. Presentation. Okay, here's another good example. So here's a company, a team that did something on Microsoft. Load. So recommendation really clear, the buy sell hold. Again, you don't have to do the EIC directly in the presentation or the historical in the presentation or the multiple analysis in the presentation. So they had a different structure for their presentation. But again, here was their as is. They took the screenshots again. Then they went through their bear changes in the assumptions, explained the changes in the rationale, bull changes, rationale, target changes, rationale. A little more on the target. You don't have to do a sanity check. And then, as I said, they did their buy sell hold, which is over here. So it's really clear about what their presentation was. So that was one. There's another one in BMW. So again, I'll put these sample presentations in your file section. It's gonna load. So you can use these to help you, think about the structure and the references for what you need to do. Again, yep. And again, their whole share price. And again, a couple of years ago, the teams had to do all 4 sections all at once for a much bigger part of their grade. I've broken it out into 4 different presentations. So just FYI, why these look a little different. So you're just doing a piece. So again, here was their as is assumptions, very clear. Additional data on their as is, their bear assumptions, rationale, their bull assumptions, rationale, their target assumptions, rationale, and then a buy sell hold opinion that was based upon that. Okay, so final one, same thing. Here's one for Under Armour. Multiples, don't actually, you're here, evaluation. Okay, so what I liked about this Under Armour one is they put a nice little table in here summarizing all 4 of the models and the kind of major changes they made across the model. So that was actually really well done. And then again, same idea. Here's our changes for as is and why we changed them. Here's our changes for a bull and why we changed them. Here's our bear and why we changed them. And then here is the target and why we ended up where we did. Okay. Again, you're not having to do the sanity check. So that's what you need to basically do on Monday. 10 minutes, turn in the PowerPoint again with all the data. Make sure you also turn in your supporting Excel files. You won't be using them, but it'll be important for grading that I see them. And again, the format otherwise. We get all 6 teams to do that. That'll be our entire class next Monday. All right, questions about any of that? All right, so if there are no more questions, I'm going to give you the balance of the class today to get started on Merck. So as I said, you need to get one of your team members to figure out who they're going to use, your model, because I'm not giving out the models, and you need to start working on the Merck valuation this week. Right, so that's what you're going to turn in by Monday, 7 a.m. next week. And as I said, on Wednesday, we are going to have a lecture. And we're going to start the multiples content on Wednesday, okay, during our class time. So if there are no other questions, let me turn over some time in class to you to work on our group project presentation. And I will see everybody bright and early Wednesday morning. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.